What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, and you're watching TaiwanPlus. It has now been a month since campaigners filed dozens of proposals to recall lawmakers from both the ruling and opposition parties. And checks on that first round of the recall process are now coming in. The parties are fighting to keep proposals against their legislators from making it to the final voting stage. Now, our reporter Tiffany Wong has been following the recall drama, and she joins us live from our newsroom here in Taipei. Tiffany, what's the progress on the recall campaign so far?
Well, Eric, things are ramping up in this massive slew of recall campaigns here in Taiwan. 19 of the proposals have passed that 1% threshold of signatures from constituents in the voting district to move on to the next stage. And all of those campaigns are against opposition lawmakers from the Kuomintang. That means that in the second stage, the campaigners will need to collect the signatures of 10% of voters in the electoral district in order to pass that on to the very final voting stage. And they're going to have 60 days to collect those signatures before they're once again passed on to the Central Election Commission for verification. Now, the CAC also released that 9 of the petitions, all against DPP, main Democratic Progressive Party lawmakers, have not passed that 1% threshold in the first stage. However, they will be given 10 days to remedy those signatures. And we're still waiting to hear about the results of about 24 more campaigns that are still having their signatures verified by the CEC, and those should come out later this week.
Both the KMT and the DPP, they held press conferences earlier today about these recalls. What are the parties saying?
Well, the KMT is saying that some of the campaigns against their lawmakers need to have more financial transparency. They say that some of them have been using illegal methods to pay their volunteers. Now, in Taiwan, for recall campaigns that are established by private individuals, they're not able to accept any funding, and those would be considered political donations. Political donations can only be accepted by political parties or, political candidates themselves. So in this case, they wouldn't be eligible. And the KMT is accusing some of the campaigns of using under-the-table methods to circumvent these funding restrictions.
他里面说了什么呢？现场以现金交由有志公正的志工，这样才能保护团队不被攻击。白话文就是，你把现金交给志工，才能够违法的把现金交给罢免团体。
Meanwhile, the Democratic Progressive Party is accusing campaigns against their lawmakers of using signature fraud, especially using something called ghost signatures, which is the use of deceased people's names on their petitions. And they say that the KMT may be responsible for this. They say that the KMT could have used voter registration records to add names to petition lists that, people that never showed up to actually sign them.
只有一种可能，就是国民党利用他们手上掌握的名册，大规模的进行所谓不实联署、虚假联署、抄袭名册的联署。
The DPP also said that some of the named campaign organizers later denied any involvement in those campaigns, so it's also unclear how their names got onto those campaigns and those petitions. And the DPP says that they are ready to file lawsuits against any individual or party for any signature fraud or voter fraud.
Thanks, Tiffany. That was our reporter Tiffany Wong with the latest on the recall campaigns. With U.S. backing for Ukraine's fight against Russia wavering, Europe is making support for Kyiv a priority. But the U.S. isn't out of the picture. A new 4-point peace plan is expected to need Washington's approval, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he thinks that frayed ties with the U.S. can be patched up. John Van Trieste has the latest.
Okay, let's go. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stands in the front row, flanked by leaders from across Europe and beyond. The nations represented here at this summit in London want to make one thing clear. The U.S. may no longer have Ukraine's back in its 3-year struggle against Russia's invasion, but their country's support isn't going anywhere. Together, they've hammered out a 4-point peace plan.
First, we will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now. Second, we agreed that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capabilities to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace.
And the plan is already being backed up with action. In addition to a $2.7 billion military aid loan, the UK will give Ukraine export financing for more than 5,000 air defense missiles. The consensus seems to be that more action will follow. EU leaders in particular say that the continent needs to significantly rearm. In addition to raising their own defense spending, leaders at the summit envisioned building up Ukraine's ability to protect itself.
The basis of everything would be a strong Ukrainian army. We should never forget it was not very strong before the war started, and it is now much stronger. There are more than 800,000 soldiers in service, and that's something we should have in mind. That
the VIP treatment of President Zelensky, topped off with a visit to King Charles's private residence, is a world away from the openly hostile reception Zelensky got at the White House last week, leaving a minerals for aid deal up in the air. But the absence of the U.S. at the summit in London is still something the gathered leaders, including Zelensky himself, feel. The 4-point peace plan may need U.S. backing to work. Still, Zelensky says he's not losing hope closer ties can be restored.
Ми розраховуємо на допомогу Сполучених Штатів Америки. Безумовно. І я вважаю, що припинення такої допомоги – це допомога буде тоді виключно Путіну. І тому вважаю, що Сполучені Штати – представники цивілізованого світу, лідери цього світу, і думаю, вони точно не будуть допомагати Путіну.
How realistic this is hard to gauge, as the answer largely lies with U.S. President Donald Trump, whose actions so far have some thinking that in Ukraine and beyond, Europe may now need to go it alone. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Trump advisor Elon Musk has agreed with a post on X saying the U.S. should leave NATO and the UN. The Tesla CEO's comment has been backed by Republican Senator Mike Lee. Lee had previously criticized the NATO alliance as being a good deal for Europe, but not for the U.S. Musk, the richest man in the world, is a key ally of U.S. President Donald Trump, and his endorsement is being viewed as adding weight to growing skepticism within the administration toward international alliances. Israel has halted all humanitarian aid from entering Gaza after Hamas rejected a U.S. proposal to extend the first phase of the ceasefire. The move has led to domestic and international criticism. Rosie Granger reports.
Backed up and waiting to be let in, trucks of humanitarian aid sit idle in Egypt's border crossing with Gaza after Israel blocked the flow of the essential goods into the enclave.
ممنوع بدون مسببات. اديني سبب مقنع. اديني سبب مقنع ان الاكل ده يترفض.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Hamas is to blame for the disruption. The group rejecting a proposal to extend the first phase of the temporary ceasefire in Gaza for another 6 weeks. The extension apparently proposed by US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, as the first phase of the truce ended on Saturday.
וויטקוף הציע את המתווה להארכת הפסקת האש לאחר שהוא התרשם שאין בשלב זה אפשרות לגשר בין שתי העמדות של ישראל ושל החמאס לגבי שלב ב' ושדרוש זמן נוסף לשיחות כדי להשיג הסכמה אפשרית.
Washington is yet to confirm the proposal. Netanyahu says it includes a halt to the fighting until the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan and the Jewish Passover holiday, as well as the release of half the remaining 59 Israeli hostages held in Gaza. But Hamas says the proposal is a stalling technique designed to avoid negotiations for a lasting peace and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza. The group has hit out at Israel's blockade on the Strip, calling it a war crime, while neighbouring countries, including Egypt, criticised the move.
للعقاب الجماعي وللتجويع هذا أمر مرفوض تماما ويمثل انتهاك صارخ وصريح للقانون الدولي الإنساني.
The Israeli government is also feeling pressure from within. Hundreds of protesters gathering outside Netanyahu's home in Jerusalem, urging their government to continue negotiations on a second phase. And for those with loved ones still in captivity, concerns over what comes next.
At this point, we were supposed to be hearing all about the second phase and how Israel and Hamas and the mediators are planning to bring all the hostages back, including my cousin. And all we're hearing right now is that we are going back to war, that Hamas is reluctant to continue, that Israel is not necessarily abiding, but every part of the deal.
And where to next for the millions of displaced civilians in Gaza, who had just begun to try and put their lives back together with the help of thousands of trucks of aid that flowed into the enclave during the ceasefire.
المعاناة حتزداد بعد قرار الاحتلال بإغلاق المعابر، وإحنا بصراحة يعني من بداية الحرب وهو يعني وماسك في الخطوة هذه، يعني بيحاول الاحتلال دائما يجوعنا، وإحنا خايفين من تجويع الشعب طبعا من قلة المساعدات ومن قلة المواد الغذائية.
In this conflict that has already claimed tens of thousands of lives, renewed fighting could once again leave these refugees picking up the pieces. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Heavy fog left thousands of people stranded on Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands over the long weekend. Flights to mainland Taiwan and ferries to the Chinese city of Xiamen were disrupted, causing travel chaos. Over 1,000 people are on standby for flights, some of whom got in line starting at 3 a.m. to try and get a seat. Researchers have just discovered a new fish species in Taiwan. The 10-centimeter-long fish, a kind of estuary garfish, was found in Kaohsiung Harbor in southern Taiwan. It has a long snout and only 9 fin rays, those are the bony part of the fins, which distinguish it from other similar species. This fish is rare, one of only 4 such species in Taiwan, and it's still not clear yet where besides Kaohsiung they might be found. 4 police dogs in Taiwan have been formally honored and sent into retirement. Central Taiwan's police force put the dogs up for adoption and vetted applicants thoroughly to make sure the dogs would go to great homes to live out the rest of their lives. Leslie Liao has more.
Tiny, Candy, Pinky, and Bobby are 4 good boys and girls who have kept the public safe for years. People may not know it, but these dogs and their nimble noses have done everything from patrolling the streets to sniffing for contraband. After an illustrious career in public service, they're being let go. Not because of poor performance, but because they've reached the ripe old retirement age of 7. The 4 dogs were put up for adoption. But because of their good work, their handlers went out of the way to make sure that they were going to good homes. Close to 100 people applied to take the dogs.
总面积的话是700平，就是一个院子，让他们能够快乐。
At their honors ceremony, the dogs were presented with hordes of new toys, treats, and goodies, all so they can focus on enjoying their retirement instead of taking a bite out of crime. Eason Pan and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
The dramatic comedy Anora has won big at the Oscars, bagging 5 trophies, including Best Picture and Best Leading Actress for breakout star Mikey Madison. The musical, Emilia Perez, also won multiple awards, claiming Best Supporting Actress and Best Original Song. Adrian Brody won Best Lead Actor for his role in The Brutalist, which also got Best Cinematography and Best Original Score. And thanks for joining us here on What's Up Taiwan. Visit our website to see more of our news reports and other programs. Finally, we take you back to the Oscars to see some of the stars on the red carpet before the ceremony. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. See you next time.